Russian President Vladimir Putin warned NATO against crossing a red line in Ukraine, underscoring that Moscow would have no choice but to respond while boasting about Russia's hypersonic missile development. Putin said that the deployment of NATO troops or advanced missile systems on Ukrainian soil that could strike Moscow within minutes would be a step too far for Russia. NATO has not taken any steps along these lines. Putin said, if some kind of strike systems appear on the territory of Ukraine, the flight time to Moscow will be 7 to 10 minutes, and 5 minutes in the case of a hypersonic weapon being deployed. Putin has also said the Zircon hypersonic cruise missile, which is poised to enter service with the Russian Navy in 2022, is capable of flying 9 times the speed of sound and has a range of roughly 620 miles. Putin emphasized that the missile could reach some targets within just 5 minutes. Hypersonic missiles are designed to be virtually unstoppable and are capable of flying at least 5 times the speed of sound. The US, Russia, and China are locked in a global arms race to develop hypersonic weapons. A top Space Force official said that the US is not as advanced as the Chinese or the Russians in terms of hypersonic programs. Ukrainian and Western officials have worried about a Russian troop buildup near Ukraine, fearing it could herald an invasion. But Moscow has insisted it has no such intention and accused Ukraine and its Western backers of making up the claims to cover up their own allegedly aggressive designs. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at their meeting in Stockholm that if Russia decides to pursue confrontation, there will be serious consequences, adding that the best way to avert a crisis is through diplomacy. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said in Moscow that the Ukrainian authorities' aggressive and increasingly intensive provocative action on the line of contact gives grounds for concerns about a possible flare-up of hostilities. He said that recent statements from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials indicate that the Ukrainian leadership doesn't exclude a forceful scenario. On the other side, Russia has accused Ukraine of deploying half its army, about 125,000 troops, to confront pro-Russian separatists in the east of the country, and said it had launched its regular winter drills in its southern military district bordering Ukraine. Maria Zakharova, spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, said, "The Ukrainian army is building up its military strength, bringing in hardware and personnel." The Ukrainian military declined to comment on her statement. Zakharova said that, according to some reports, the number of troops in the conflict zone in Donbass had already reached 125,000 people, which is half of the entire Ukrainian army. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused NATO of deploying a significant amount of military hardware near Russia's borders and said Moscow could respond to security threats from Western countries and Ukraine if necessary. Contrarily, US, NATO, and Ukrainian officials have raised the alarm in recent weeks over what they say are unusual Russian troop movements near the border with Ukraine, and have suggested that Moscow might be preparing to launch an attack. Moscow has denied any plans to do so. Lavrov said Ukrainian military maneuvers and use of drones in the country's east, held by separatists, posed a threat to Russia, and it was ready to respond if needed. He said, "We simply cannot rule out the possibility that Kiev will set out on a military adventure." President Putin stressed that they do not need conflict, but if the West cannot hold back Ukraine, and on the contrary encourages it, of course, they will take all the necessary steps to ensure our security. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg warned that the US-led military organization must prepare for the worst as concern mounts that Russia could be preparing to invade Ukraine. NATO is worried about a Russian buildup of heavy equipment and troops near Ukraine's northern border, not far from Belarus. Ukraine says Moscow kept about 90,000 troops in the area following massive war games in western Russia earlier this year, and could easily mobilize them. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his country's intelligence service had uncovered plans for a Russia-backed military coup. Russia denied the allegation and rejected the assertion that it is planning to invade Ukraine. Zelensky was addressing parliament after Ukraine had urged NATO to prepare economic sanctions against Russia and boost military cooperation with Kiev as a way of deterring the Kremlin from launching a new attack after Russia began massing troops near to the border. He said, "We must tell the truth, that we will not be able to stop the war without direct negotiations with Russia, and today this has already been recognized by all external partners. On the other side, Zelensky's administration said it had tried to arrange in-person talks between the president and Russian leader Vladimir Putin, but that its requests had been ignored. The Kremlin has said that Putin is not against the idea of talks with Zelensky, but that Moscow would want to see a proper agenda prepared for a meeting. The United States has shared intelligence with European allies warning of a possible invasion. European diplomats acknowledge the Russian troop movements, but some countries have played down the threat of any imminent invasion ordered by Moscow. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said, "We are very concerned about the movements we've seen along Ukraine's border. We know that Russia often combines those efforts with internal efforts to destabilize a country. That's part of the playbook, and we're looking at it very closely." Additionally, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas also said, Russia would have to pay a high price for any form of aggression. Honest and sustainable de-escalation steps, which can only go via the route of talks, are all the more important now. NATO and the United States have both issued stark warnings to Russia in recent weeks that it would pay a high price for any new military aggression, amid worries that the simmering conflict in eastern Ukraine could erupt into open war between the two neighbors. NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said, "We have a wide range of options to make sure that Russia will be confronted with serious consequences if they once again use force against an independent sovereign nation, Ukraine." Ukraine is not a member of NATO, but the US-led alliance has said it is committed to preserving the sovereignty of the former Soviet Republic, which has tilted towards the West since 2014 and aspires to join both NATO and the European Union. Ukraine has centuries of shared history with Russia, and Moscow keenly resents its westward tilt since a pro-Russian president was ousted in a revolution in 2014. Its current aspiration to join both the European Union and NATO have made it the main flashpoint in Russia's deteriorating relations with the West. The two ex-Soviet neighbors have remained locked in a tense tug-of-war after Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula in 2014 following the ouster of the country's Kremlin-friendly president and threw its weight behind a separatist insurgency in Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland, known as the Donbass. More than 14,000 people have died in the fighting. The US has provided over $2.5 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since 2014, and there's bipartisan support in Congress for increasing that aid. Consequently, all parties are accusing each other of soldier deployment at the Ukraine-Russia border. In your opinion, who is right?